But speaking of video game adaptations, Halo. Good God, Halo. So you weren't here last time. Last episode of Halo, actually the episode before the last episode, was actually pretty good. It focused entirely on Chief and the Spartans and the UNSC, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then immediately the next episode focused exclusively on Quan Ha, and I hate her. Not the actress, the character. And what I really like when I go to Twitter and see people talking about how much they dislike the character, they make it very clear. A lot of people, at the very least, I've seen make it very clear. Like the actress is fine; she's doing good with what she has, but the writing isn't great, and the character they're trying to push on us, we don't care about. But people are being very respectful to the actress, and I'm happy for that. But the character of Quan Ha sucks bad, and here's why: I don't care. This is a show called Halo, where the main character is Master Chief, and it's based off a first-person shooter. I'm here to see people. I'm here to see giant people in exosuits kill aliens, and I want a little bit of like political stuff with the UNSC. I don't care about Quan Ha, but I do think that there is a way to frame Quan Ha's story that would make her more interesting if they just didn't stray so far from essentially the way the story of the games. And here's my idea. All right. So in the games, spoiler alert for the games and the show. Spartan 2s were created to squash human rebellion in a rebellion called the Insurrection. And that would have been such an easy way to tie Quan Ha's story with Chiefs, because he's a Spartan 2. He was made to literally kill other humans. So having them cross each other in that respect would have been very interesting. And I think in the show, he killed her mom. It would have been more interesting if we saw that, and then we would understand why she hates him, and we'd be like, okay, I'm interested in this character now, because we just watched the character that we do love from the games do something very horrible, which is actually stuff that he's done in the story of the games, but not actually in the games. Like this is stuff that's been talked about in like the novels and stuff outside of the games. But like he's killed tons of humans for the sake of the UNSC. And I feel like if they framed it like that, we would care so much more about Quan Ha. So I have an idea for an alternate version of how they could have done things. And it's essentially this. It would focus on the rebellion and Quan Ha and fighting against the UNSC, right? And eventually they would send in Spartans, and Spartans would be seen as like these monsters that just run through all of these people, because that's why they were built, to just be better, stronger, and easily squash the rebellion. And there is in canon a point where the Spartans are, including Chief and his team, are essentially captured not captured, but they're like, I think their armors are like shut down. When their armor shut down, they essentially just can't move because it's really heavy, and it's also an exosuit, and it makes them, even though they're already really strong, they get even stronger with the armor. And then they're almost essentially killed by the rebels. But then there was a secret fifth Spartan who came in and saves the day, and we get to see that and see Quan Ha get close to like getting revenge for her mother's death. And then eventually, what unites them is the Covenant's attack, which is what happens in the games. The rebels are forced to work with the UNSC because they now have a greater threat to deal with. And that's when we finally switch over to Master Chief's point of view and the Spartans, and we see more of the UNSC, and we learn and we garner a lot of sympathy for Master Chief, who at first looks like a villain because he's just murdering a bunch of rebels. But now he's the big hero, and we learn that he was a child soldier who was indoctrinated and forced into this, and he literally knows nothing but being a soldier. And we start to be like, okay, it's kind of like not even his fault that he did all these things. He's just been doing this his entire life. He knows nothing else. I just feel like there's so many nuanced ways to go about this story, and me, not a professional writer, very easily just came up with a much more interesting story off the top of my head with the knowledge of the lore that I have. And it's, Amir, why don't we make stuff? Are you still there? Because I've been talking for a long time.
I'm still here. I had considerably less to say about Halo.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, it's weird. They could make a good story because there's a lot of good story to tell. And what a lot of people they try to use the excuse, and I'm sure you've heard it before with other like adaptations and stuff that you've watched, where people will get upset when you're upset that it's not like the source material, and then people will be like, "Oh yeah, well there has to be changes. It can't be one for one." And it's like, yeah, no shit. But there's a difference between changes made because it those changes need to be made because you're translating a game to a movie, on top of the restrictions that come with budget and the fact that it's live action rather than being animated where you can do whatever you want. Outside of like there's a difference between those changes and straight up writing a completely different story, which is what happens every single time. It's not a story that's changed because it has to be because it's a movie. Sorry if you hear that bird in the background. My window's open. But they just change the whole story, and I hate it. They don't ever have to do that. They decide to do that. They essentially just use these IPs as a skin to throw over a story that they want to tell that has nothing to do with the story that we want to see, the story that it's supposed to be based off of.